Okay. Okay. Always fuck that stuff up. All right. All right. We're just fine. We're doing just fine. Okay. Hope you guys are doing well today. My name is T-Break. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the progress made over the past 2 weeks. Let's see here. All right. What have we got? Going to keep it concise, going to keep it straight to the point because there's a lot that's going to be happening. There'll be plenty of stuff for you to wrap your head around in the future, but today's little stream is just going to be about more of like more of just like the tech related stuff. Unfortunately, there is not too much for the community and the players to come and interact with just yet. You're going to have to hang in there for at least a little bit longer. But over the past 2 weeks, we got the modifications put together for the Twig blockchain, right? So Twig, it's a fork of Spring. It's got a couple of modifications to it. Don't worry about these commits; they're not the best commits, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The only changes are so it's got a whitelisting function right within Nodios, just to see if you try to create a new account or set a smart contract. It's going to see if you have the whitelisting permissions for it. And of course, it's got all of the little modifications for the block interval and, just all like the system resources, right? The max limits on everything. So it's designed to be as performative as possible. That's really the prospect here. And because, there isn't much of an incentive, like there's, game theory wise, right? If you're incentivized to, or at least if the business model, the tokenomics are to bill users for the amount of computation that they're doing, then you're incentivized to, make that computation take as much time as possible, right? And so while removing kind of in a sense, removing that incentive, right? It means that, let's just make it as performative as possible. And there is really no consequence to that, right? Anyways, so the system, just like the blockchain itself it's up and running. It's looking good. Now it is using Spring. In case you didn't know, Spring has a BLS license on it. Now I am in contact with the ENF and we're still discussing things and figuring out how to go forward about it. Now they've said it's just fine for me to use Spring up until it reaches a $5 million market cap. Right, so we've got quite a bit of leeway, quite a bit of space. Once it does reach a market cap, I'm either gonna have to get a commercial license or figure something out, and that's the part that's currently being discussed. But for now, and at least for the near future, there's gonna be no token sale. There's gonna be no ICO or whatnot, right? No seed, no funding round. So it shouldn't reach a $5 million market cap for quite some time. It's gonna be a slow and steady growth, and that's like the number one prospect, right? Go next. What else have we got? So yeah, we launched the chain. The chain's up and running. I'll toss this in the I'll toss this in the stream here. Toss in the Discord as well, in case anyone wants to mess around with this. You should be able to, like, this is just the block explorer, but with a local testnet set up for it, or at least just a local version of it, right? And so when you set up a local version, you can put in the endpoints into the system tokens to be able to look at any chain. And so what we've got here, so this is what the system contract looks like now. It's substantially smaller compared to let's have a look here at Wax's, for example. Wax's has almost like twice as many tables, a whole lot more actions, right? Well, probably twice as much. And so the main difference here is that a lot of the stuff that has to do with system resources and resource management, all that got taken out. All the stuff with, let's say the stuff with like name bits and whatnot, that's just being moved to its own private, or like not private, but it's just its own separate smart contract, And that was kind of like an interesting thing that I noticed when going through all of this. It's like, having the EOSIO names, like, and just having it be its own thing, it becomes like its own like nice little modular contract that's just, it does exactly the same functionality, but it's like, well, there's actually no reason to have this within the system contract. You know, it's kind of like getting a driver's license at the car's manufacturing spot. You know, it's not doesn't really make sense. Hey Christaya, how you doing? How you doing? We got the Wax Prophet in here as well. Welcome, welcome. So yeah, it's being made a lot smaller, a lot more bare bones, straight to the point. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is managing the producers, managing like just like the core system thing, because that's what it is, right? Now, there's a couple new innovations with the system contract as well that are worth mentioning. And just to demonstrate, that the testnet is up and running. So as you can see here, I've got Anchor in here, right, with the testnet for Twig, and I can go ahead. Let's go ahead and let's push an action. Let's do the auth. No, I don't want to do any crazy actions here. There aren't exactly any like fun actions to press, but I can. You know what? Actually, there might be a good action we could press here. Set code info. All right. So this is a new action as a part of this system contract. And so what we can do here, I'm gonna set the version. It's 0.02. And so what code info does, let's go ahead and we'll toss in the source code, right? A link to the GitHub. And when we go ahead and submit transaction, you'll see it shows up with Twig testnet, EOSIO active. We have the fields, the signatures, everything, right? We go ahead and we sign that, and it pushes it on chain, right? Now I don't have a history solution set up and running just yet, but it should be pretty straightforward. But like the rest of the features are there. And what that action does, we go ahead and we check out contract info. So normally we have the ABI hash, right? And we have like the code hash as well. That's like an optional thing, which, whenever a smart contract's updated, it will, create a hash of its ABI or its code. But I figured, well, why not actually just put this into something like this, right? And so this puts the ABI and the code together, and it's got the hash for each of them, and it shows the time when each of them were updated. It's got the versioning, got the source, and I feel like, well, this is just so much better for like if anyone, imagine if all the smart contracts and every single Antelope ecosystem had this, right, where you could just see like, well, is there a source, or you could just put like a link to your website or whatever, and a little description, little version kind of thing, and then a bit further on, it's like, well, wallets could use these hashes and these time slots to check the integrity of, let's say, auto signing, right? Whitelisting transactions. I think this would be an amazing thing if it was adopted elsewhere, and maybe even as far as getting adopted by a by wallets as well, because this makes it actually like very secure. Like when you go to sign a transaction on a contract, it'll cache the last time it was updated, the code or the ABI, and it'll say like, oh, well, hold on, this was updated. Is this still doing what are you still signing the same, are you interacting with the same contract, right? And so a little bit of security for malicious code and whatnot. But more than anything, it's like at least you now have some context for, and anytime you see a smart contract out in the wild, you'll have some context, right? Be able to look it up. What is this? What does it do? What version is this? All that good stuff. Now there's a couple beyond just this, there's a couple unique things within this this system contract, and this kind of ties into the tokenomics. What we've got here is we've got this lucky number table, and so what's happening here, let's go ahead and we'll pull up the code for it. Now all of this code is I've already shared it with you guys, and it's already it's up on, it should be right here. If you go to, yeah, there we go, the entire systems contract, right? It should be right there for you. Now what's happening here, with this lucky number guy. All right, you got just a seed, and every time, let's have a look. I think it should be under. Is it here? Yeah, it's close to there. It should be under tokenomics. Yeah. So on every single block, what it's doing is it's taking the producer and the SHA-256, which is the previous block's ID, toss in this function, and this is with working with the randomness provider. Now the randomness provider, this contract right here, it's this header, it's good to go to use for really like any wax or EOS, any antelope chains. If you have 256s and you want to turn that into usable RNG, you should probably pick this guy up, right? So it's based on the original randomness provider that was introduced with I think Atomic Pax X almost like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even earlier than that. But it's received some upgrades, right? It's received some upgrades. Now I don't have the data the data on hand, or like I haven't really published it. But this RNG machine, its accuracy for, because really that's like the main concern with like a pseudo RNG and on-chain sources of RNG. It's like, well, is this actually a normal distribution, right? If I say that I want like a 0.003% drop rate, is that actually what I'm going to observe out in the wild? And what I kind of found is that, well, with the traditional randomness provider header that, like, by the way, the majority of the Wax ecosystem uses, it is not a standard or normal distribution. It's actually a polynomial distribution. And so the odds, like, even though you might prescribe a 3% drop rate, you might observe 8% in practice. And everyone's seen this before, where sporadically, spontaneously, you all of a sudden get multiple of the same NFTs, same templates get minted back to back within a short period of time, right? So there are some odd behaviors happening with the older version of this header that's used in a lot of contracts. But this new version, it solves those to an extent, right? So I ran somewhere around like several 100 million simulations, and the safety of it's around a 99.8% good. That's like the confidence interval that, like, so if you set like a drop rate, it's going to be within 99.8% of what you prescribe, right? So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It took a while to get this thing dialed in here, but it's pretty good. So this is, at least you can rely on that, you won't have to worry about getting, some messed up RNG. And the other stuff that it's doing with the tokenomics, right? Because it calls it and it tosses in a seed and it tosses in the block number. So that's like the salt, right? Or like the pepper, I guess, the salt and the pepper. And what this is doing, initially it extracts as a byte array, right? So in SHA-256, it's 32 bytes ranging from 0 to 255. And every time we use the blend or the get blend, it takes another seed in, and an optional, so we have like the get blend here, right? So the previous block ID, and it takes the producer's name as well, right? So that's the other thing that's using as for the pepper. So USAN names, they are 12 letters, but they're also a number. It's better explained as a number. And so that's tossed back into here. This goes ahead and it just does all kinds of stuff to it, right? So what it's doing is it's storing this new seed within another array, right? That's 64 bytes. It creates a SHA-512, and then it tosses that, takes another hash of that, does all kinds of stuff. It's just, it's doing crazy things with the seeds, with the 256s, and that makes pretty good RNG in practice. And then what we're doing is we're doing a randomness call, and if you hit the lucky roll, then it's going to generate a chunk, and then we have the on chunk action. What's happening here is, so this is how the tokens get minted into existence, right? This is how they get initially issued. So let me try to explain it like this. So right now on Wax, for context, every 2 weeks this kind of thing happens, and all of the block producers, all the guilds, the OIG, everyone, they all get paid at the same time, right? And the consequence of that is that, well, when everyone gets paid at the same time, everyone goes to turn their tokens into dollars, and then all of a sudden you have just like this predictable intermittent like drop in token value, right? It's not the most ideal situation, but it's something that, like, well, all of these little bits, you adjust for all of them, and it goes a long way, right? And another example of this is like, with Alien Worlds, you got like the token pools, and people will wait to like hit the claim with like a really powerful tools, right right as when the pools get refilled. And so this approach, what it's doing is it's making it so that the time, because this it all happens on chunk, and so that is relatively random. And so the time in which the pools get refilled or people get paid out, it also becomes random, right? And so it's not as predictable. And so you have this case where it's like a bit more streamlined, right? It's a bit more gradual, and there's less potential for like abuse in a way, right? Or at least incentives for, let's say, players not finishing, like in practice, it's like you were essentially otherwise would be incentivized to not play the game until the pool is just about to get refilled, and then you want to like finish your run then, right? Because you're just going to get a bigger reward. And I don't think that that's very good for the gameplay, right? That's just not very, like, you shouldn't be encouraged to not play the game, because that makes it more efficient. So that's one of the things that it does. The other thing that it does is with this whole EOSIO bank contract. Now, this is all just code, so I don't think it's like the best way to explain it. So let's go ahead and draw something here, right? I'm gonna go ahead and draw, let's say, do it like this. Say tokens get minted, right? Right. So the odds are 1 block a second. This goes into chunks equal 1 of, I think, 4096 blocks. Those are the odds. But on testnet, it's 16 times faster. Was it Control L? No. Is it just L? Not this one. Not this one. There's a Shift L. That's what I'm looking for, right? So 1 block a second. Chunks are 1 out of like 4,000 blocks. And then what's happening here is that on the block, or on the chunk, it's going to mint, I think it's 1, 6 times like 1 out of 20 times max supply. Right, so that's what it's doing, and this goes into this wallet here, right? So every once in a while, it's minting the tokens into here. Get rid of these guys. Now, all of the, let's say, like, game fees, right? So such as, DEX fees, secondary marketplace fees, tokenomics fees, space-time fees, drafting fees, right? Well, I guess you should just say costs, right? All of these things also go into the chunks wallet, right? And then from the chunks wallet, it's gonna vest it immediately, right? So immediately vests until next epoch, right? Now the epochs are, just for some context, right? 1 epoch equals roughly 6 months, lines up with in-game seasons, right? And so this becomes a a model that like eventually, you know, there's going to be, it's going to hit the max supply. It's going to take about 10 years to reach the max supply, by the way. And then eventually, well, hopefully these fees and stuff will be able to take over the issuance, right? This won't be necessary anymore. Well, it won't even be possible anymore after a certain period of time. And the game will continue through this approach. And then it immediately vests it until next epoch. At least I should say that is the immediately vests, you know, like team, producers, and leaderboard rewards until next epoch, right? So this ends up being somewhere about, let's toss this guy here, bring this guy down here, bring this guy up here. This ends up being about 2.5% of tokens in chunks. At least that's kind of what it's set to right now. This becomes essentially like the Fed inflation rate, at least for the project. And then the rest of it just goes directly into game pool, distributing as rewards to players. Right? So that's kind of how it works here. I'm watching TV with my wife. I wish I could hear. Hopefully you will save the VOD. Oh, you better believe it. You better believe it. I'm going to save all these VODs. And you can see the one from the other week. It's up on YouTube. But yeah, like these VODs are like pretty knowledge dense. And so you might have to, you know, skim through it a couple of times. I will be, I'm going to try to get some kind of transcribing service. Use some sort of AI to create, you know, transcripts of it, use those transcripts to create like condensed little blogs, little short style content, because it's going to be like probably like an hour or so, even if I try to make it as fast as possible, right? But anyways, so this is kind of how it works. And so you guys are going to continuously get lots and lots of tokens while you're just playing the game. You're going to use those to, I guess this becomes a bit difficult. Yeah, let me move this guy over here, bring this guy over here, so I can do this. Right, so you guys get lots and lots of tokens while you're playing the game. You spend it on all these things, and it gets collected as fees. This goes back into chunks, and it keeps on recycling through, and little by little it goes out into, you know, this is the portion that becomes like a profit margin for the team, for myself, for producers, and of course into the leaderboards, right? But of course all of this gets vested. And so in practice, we can hop over to SIO.bank. We can see how this looks here. As as tokens are sent over here from production, they get vested until the next epoch, and then during the next epoch, they slowly get distributed to the people, right? So it becomes something that's going to be like, you don't have to ever worry about like some massive amount of tokens ever being released. It's consistently going to be this gradual bleed of tokens or emissions of tokens into like the rewards, right? And I feel like there's a good chance of this being a relatively sustainable approach. But of course, these numbers are subject to change, right? But just for some context here. So that's kind of like the gist of what's happening with all of these all the tokenomics for now, at least. And this is just for like the core system token. Now, gonna have to do a bit more work on the systems contract just so I can get all the features I want in there. This is pretty much everything, but I think it's mostly like the Savannah consensus kind of stuff. But that's not, you know, at least for the crowd that's not into block production. I don't think that's gonna be too interesting, and I got to do a bit more research on it to get a firm understanding of it as well. Finishing and publishing the white paper, right? Just to set some expectations for people, so you guys know what kind of like the scope of the game is, and like what's going to be happening and whatnot. And then of course I want to finish up all of the fundamental infra stuff. And so this includes account creation service. It includes creating snapshots, includes Hyperion nodes and other history solutions. Right? That's kind of the scope. I'm hoping to achieve all these things over the next 2 weeks. Now let's take a look at, go ahead. So let's take a look at the rest of the stuff. So all of this stuff is implemented. I will have to say, however, the no CPU or net fees, I will make, I unfortunately have to kind of redact this. It has to be, the fees, they're not meant to be large, and they're not going to be large, but they're going to be just something so that, you know, because if it's truly free, what happens is that, well, someone can just set up a bot to fill up all of the blocks with garbage just by like transferring NFTs back and forth. You know, it becomes exploitable. And so having like just a tiny number attached to it, again, not something that's going to really like make a dent in any normal player. Like you're going to literally play the game, you're going to punch a tree, it's going to drop 100 twigs or like a million twigs, and you're going to be able to cover all of these, like any of these expenses, no problem, just by playing the game. But just like a tiny nominal fee that will just prevent the chain from being exploited, right? We've got part one, right? So testnet deployment is done. Now the redeployment of all of the game contracts. This is what I'm doing this right now. Currently got all the created all the accounts. I'm just going through all the contracts again to make sure that, well, they're gonna be a-okay, because they're dependent on a lot of stuff that doesn't exist, at least on this new testnet, such as the Wax RNG Oracle and several other things. But at least we've got our own RNG Oracle here, in a way, right? And you can see like every block, the seed's getting updated, right? And you can see the block sins, the chunks remaining, and all that, right? Yeah, so we got a good bit of stuff there. Now for mutant assets and all this, the marketplace is going to be no problem. Same with the DEX as well, but the API, I think the API is going to be the most difficult thing. The NFT standard is complete as well, but yeah, just the API, I think that's the largest amount of work there, and hopefully get account creation finished here as well. As far as the core protocol goes and actually customizing Twig, I think we're done in that department for now, until, you know, get a market viable product, because I can mess around with a system and stuff for years if I wanted to. That's not where any of the product or any of the profits come from, right? That doesn't actually determine the value of the work, right? And so just having these upper limits on what the system contract can do, or just what the system itself can do, is plenty, you know. And so yeah, this area is pretty much done. Half of this is done. We're gonna get the rest of this done. We're gonna get half of this guy done here too, and hopefully start finishing this guy as well. So that'll be what, like 3 by the end of this month. We're gonna have 3 of the 6 items finished on the roadmap. And then I think probably another 2 weeks just for the API on this guy. Probably another 2 weeks on the DEX. And the DEX, it's like the contract might be 2 days, but it's really just a UI, and getting a little bit of a history support for that as well. And then the alpha gameplay, right? That's going to be, I think, a good month of work. And so right now we're on track for achieving the Q2 roadmap. Things are looking good. All right, do you guys have any questions? If you got some questions, now would be a great time to ask. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this stream up. I don't want to take up too much of anyone's time, and I've got a full day of work ahead of me as well. So, any goers? Gonna give 10 more seconds here. GG Cavs. Yeah, I appreciate it, Wax Profit. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, happy Friday to you too, buddy. Happy Friday. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me on today's stream, and I will catch you guys in 2 weeks. See ya.